What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. And in today's coding video, we're going to be learning what lists are in the Python programming language. So with that said, let's hop right in. Anyways, now that we know what we're covering today, let's hop right into it. So what exactly is a list? Before we get started, you guys open up that folder that you've created with all the other lessons if you've been following along in this playlist. And as well, if you have not been following along, please start from video number 1, part 1 of the series, the playlist, okay? So today we'll be covering lists. So please create a new file called lists.py in the working folder. So all you have to do, if you haven't created this file already, is click on at new file and type in lists.py. As you can see, I can't hit enter to create it because I already have created, but just go ahead and type in lists.py and make that folder. Now we have that file open. Let's get right into it. So what exactly is a list? Well, a list looks like this, okay? So I'm going to assign a variable a equals to this. So y'all know what variables are. We've covered this for quite a bit, so you guys should get used to that. Okay, so basically anytime we want to store information and we want to remember that information, use a variable. So how does this work? I have a, it's equal to this list over here, which is a new data type, and it's basically opening and closing parentheses. Now, if you're on VS Code, if you type in the first square bracket, the other should come in. That's the same that goes for regular brackets and curly braces. But if you press in the first square bracket, you get the other one. And these opening and closing square brackets is what we call a list. So this is a list. This is not a list. Okay, so this is not a list and this is not a list. Okay, these brackets, opening and closing, this pair of brackets is a list. Okay, so now in a list, basically, it's a container. What that means is we can store multiple values in here. Okay, so I can be like 3, I can be like false, I can with a capital F, right? Booleans are capital. Hi, it could be a string, right? So over here, what can I say is? I can say A is a list containing the values 3, false, and high. So every value in a list has to be separated by commas, right? So this over here is a list, right? But even if we don't have any values, this is what we call an empty list, okay? So if I print out A, we completely fine. How do we know that? Well, click on the run button, okay? So if you have the Python extension installed, all you have to do if you don't have that already, go to this icon over here, extensions, type in Python, and the first one that comes up, just click on it and then hit install. As you can see, I've already installed it from the marketplace already. But once you do that, go back to Explorer tab and then type and then click on this play button. And once you hit this play button, it will run the current file that you're in. So I don't have to go through the terminal like that and then type in python.exe and then name of the file. So in this case, I would have to type on python.exe, list.py again and again. No, I can just click on the run button. So do that if you don't have to install already the Python extension in the extensions tab, then click run. So every time you finish writing code, control S to save and then run. Okay, so as you can see, printed out our empty list, right? So we're printing out A and it says empty list. But this is completely valid. That's all I was trying to say. But basically in a list, we can store multiple values of different kinds, okay? So 3, false, high, you know. We can even have a float in here, 0.5. So all these are different data types, but all of them are in a list. And how do we access each element? Well, I can be like print. Well, to do that, to access each individual element in the list that's separated by commas that we see over here, all we have to do is do something called indexing, which means getting an item from the container, in this case, the list. So getting the item from the list by referencing its index. Okay, so basically in Python, indexes start at 0. Okay, these so I'm making you comment. Indexes start at 0. And you guys, as I create these comments, make sure to just type out these comments, right? You know what comments are. Those hashtags and then an explanation of the code, right? So I can say indexes start at 0 and then go up by 1. right? So that means if the first, we always know that. So one thing that you have to remember, the first element is always 0, and to access the last element is always 1, -1, my bad. So that's just how it works in Python. So if I want to get 3, what do you think the index would be? Well, I'll print A, and to index something, we type in the name of the list, 2 brackets beside that name. So whatever list do we have, A, 2 brackets beside it, and then the index of that element. So I type in 0 over here, we're going to get the very first element, which in this case should print out 3. So if I hit the run button, as you can see, the output over here, if I can make it bigger, let me just change my settings really quickly. So I'm just typing terminal font, change that, be like a lot bigger for you guys to see. Okay, what that does is it changes the font. As you can see, it printed out 3, right? And that's because 3 is the first element. Well, what if I want to get 4.5, which is the last element, right? 3 is the first, 4.5 is the last. Well, put in -1, right? So you have these 2 braces, okay? And then you have to put the index of the element that you want to retrieve from the list. So if I said -1, it should give me 4.5. Boom. How about the numbers in between? Well, if 3 is always going to be 0, then false should be at 1, right? The second element is actually 1. You might think, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, but no, it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So the second element will be at 1, right? And then the third element should be at 2. So I think you guys get the idea, okay? So this, always remember this important information about this is it starts at 0, and then it goes up by 1 the next element. And when we create a list, we need to have commas in between, okay? So that is cool and all. I'm going to comment this with Control KU, which automatically comments code, okay? And now I'm going to show you guys some cool things we can do list. Well, what if I want to add a new item? So as you can see, I typed out the items inside the list, right? I could just go, say I wanted another item at the end of the list. Well, like a string called J. Well, I don't need to type it in. I can just make Python do that for me by using what we call methods, right? Now, if you recall, a method is dot and then the name of the method. It's basically a function, okay? So I'm going to say a dot to add an element to that. So you have to call the append method. So a dot append. What this will do is add a new element to the end of a. So another element after 45. So a dot append j. Now look what happens when we print out a. There should be a j at the end. So print out a, right? Like that. Boom. We just added the j. So as after adding the j, we print it out. We're going to see the j at the end of the list. But so we print it out before we added j, right? Boom. There's no j. We printed it out before adding j. After adding j and then printing it out, we can see j is over there. So that's really beautiful, okay? Now what if I remove an element? Well, a dot remove j. So basically, I added this j, right? But the next line immediately undoes what I did there. So what we should see is we shouldn't see a j. See? Before having a j, right? And then after adding a j and then removing a j immediately, it gets rid.